The quantum burst transmission cut through the darkness of space like a knife through silk, carrying with it the desperate hopes of an entire civilization. In the observation dome of the Lumerian Central Archive, Chief Archivist Silara watched the message disappear into the void, her luminescent skin pulsing with anxiety. The massive holographic display before her showed the approaching fleet of the Kraken Dominion, 300 warships strong, their obsidian hulls absorbing what little starlight reached them. How long until they reach our outer defense grid? Silara's voice remained steady, though her inner light flickered with each word. The question was directed at Defense Coordinator Ven, whose crystalline form caught and reflected the emergency lights pulsing throughout the chamber. 17 standard cycles, Ven replied, his usually melodic voice harsh with strain. The evacuation of the outer colonies is proceeding. But he left the sentence unfinished. They both knew that evacuation was a polite fiction. No colony had ever successfully evacuated before the Kraken arrived. The Lumerians had spent 10,000 years building their civilization on the principles of peace and scientific advancement. Their achievements in quantum mechanics and biotechnology had transformed dozens of worlds, created cures for countless diseases, and opened new frontiers in space exploration. But none of that mattered to the Kraken Dominion. To them, advanced technology was simply something to be taken, and peaceful planets were simply easier targets. Silara moved closer to the quantum array, her steps echoing in the vast chamber. The Archive's databases contained the accumulated knowledge of countless generations, scientific discoveries, artistic masterpieces, philosophical treatises. All of it would be lost if the Kraken succeeded. Their standard procedure was to strip a planet of anything valuable and then reduce its surface to molten slag. The transmission reached the outer rim, announced communications specialist Trell, her tendrils weaving complex patterns in the air as she manipulated the quantum controls. We're receiving responses. Most are acknowledgments of receipt. But her voice trailed off. But what? Silara pressed. Most include variations of "we regret" or "unfortunately at this time." Trell's skin darkened with disappointment. The Kraken Dominion's reputation precedes them. Silara had expected this. No established civilization would risk the Kraken's wrath by defending an unknown race. Their brutality was legendary, their technology overwhelming, and their vengeance absolute. The few species that had tried to stand against them had been made into cautionary tales. The quantum array suddenly pulsed with unexpected energy. New signal detected, Trell announced, her tendrils freezing in surprise. It's different. The encoding is unlike anything in our database. The holographic display shifted, showing a new star system at the edge of mapped space. The signal was originating from a small blue-green planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. The planet's space around it buzzed with artificial satellites and primitive spacecraft, signs of a young spacefaring civilization. They call themselves humans. Trell translated, her voice rising with unexpected hope. They're responding to our distress call. The message materialized in the center of the chamber, projected in crisp, clear basic. This is Admiral Helena Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We have received your distress call and are preparing a response. Stand by for further communication. Help is coming. The chamber erupted in murmurs. Silara's inner light pulsed with a mixture of hope and concern. What do we know about these humans? Are they in our archives? Ven accessed the database, crystalline fingers dancing over the controls. Almost nothing. They're not part of any known trade routes. No diplomatic contacts. They appear to be completely isolated from galactic society. Show me their military capability, Silara requested, dreading what she would see. A young, isolated civilization would have no chance against the Kraken Dominion. The holographic display shifted again, showing various human vessels. They were crewed by Lumerian standards, mostly metal and ceramic construction, primitive propulsion systems, limited energy weapons. But there was something else, something that made Solara lean forward with sudden interest. "Their ship designs," she murmured. "They're all different. Unlike the elegant, standardized vessels of most civilizations, human ships showed tremendous variation. Some were sleek and minimal, others bristled with weapons. Some appeared designed for stealth, others for raw power. It was as if each ship had been built to solve a different problem, to explore a different approach to space combat. "Another transmission incoming," Trell announced. The holographic display cleared, showing a human female in what appeared to be a military uniform. Admiral Chen's face was lined with age, but her eyes burned with an intensity that made Solara's inner light pulse stronger. "We've reviewed your situation," the Admiral began without preamble. "The Kraken Dominion has a reputation, even out here at the edge of known space. We know what they do to peaceful civilizations." She paused, her expression hardening. "Humanity has a reputation too, though you wouldn't know it yet. We don't like bullies. We don't like seeing the strong prey on the weak. And we absolutely don't like being told something is impossible." The Admiral leaned forward, her voice dropping lower. "We're sending the UES Thunderchild. She's a prototype, something we've been working on in secret. Our response to threats exactly like this. You've never heard of Earth before today, but after what's about to happen, I promise you, the Kraken Dominion will never forget us." The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Solara turned to Ven, seeing her own mixture of hope and skepticism reflected in his crystalline surface. "Can they really help us?" Ven asked quietly. "The Kraken fleet? I don't know," Solara admitted, "but they're the only ones who offered." She turned back to the holographic display, watching as new data streamed in about this mysterious human vessel. "And something tells me we're about to witness something unprecedented." In the depths of space, the Kraken fleet continued its inexorable advance, its commanders completely unaware that they were about to encounter something they had never faced before. Humanity with its back against the wall, fighting for a cause it believed in. The game was about to change, and the rules along with it. The clock was ticking. In 17 cycles, the Kraken Dominion would learn a lesson that would reshape galactic politics forever. Never underestimate a species that had spent its entire history preparing for fights it wasn't supposed to win. Deep within Earth's Ganymede Naval Yard, the UES Thunderchild hung in her berth like a predator waiting to strike. Her hull was unlike anything else in humanity's arsenal. A dark, almost fluid-looking material that seemed to drink in light rather than reflect it. Worker drones swarmed around her like mechanical insects, making final adjustments and loading supplies. Captain Sarah Torres stood at the observation window, her dark eyes fixed on the ship that would either save an alien civilization or become humanity's most expensive tomb. 20 years of service in the United Earth Defense Force hadn't prepared her for this moment. Nobody had been prepared for first contact to come in the form of a desperate plea for help. "Final systems check complete," Captain, reported Commander Jack Chen, her XO and resident quantum mechanics expert. He handed her a datapad showing the Thunderchild's readiness status. "The Q drive is as stable as it's ever going to be." Torres nodded, suppressing a grimace. The quantum fold drive was the ship's greatest advantage and its biggest liability. In theory, it would allow the Thunderchild to do things no other ship in known space could accomplish. In practice, they'd never tested it under combat conditions. "What's the crew saying?" she asked, finally turning away from the window. Chen's usually stoic face broke into a slight smile. "They're ready. Scared, excited, but ready. Dr. Patel says she's finally got the targeting algorithms sorted out for the phase cannons, and Martinez swears he's solved the power distribution issues. And the special package, loaded and secured. Though I still think it's insane." Torres allowed herself a small smile. "Insanity is our specialty, Commander. That's why they picked us for this mission." She turned back to the window, watching as the last of the supply drones pulled away from the Thunderchild. "The Lumerians are expecting a warship. We're going to show them something else entirely." The bridge of the Thunderchild was unlike any other in the fleet. Instead of the traditional command chair surrounded by stations, it was arranged more like an amphitheater, with tiered workstations forming a semicircle around a central holographic projection space. Torres had helped design it herself, based on years of combat experience and countless hours of studying historical battles. "All stations report," she ordered as she took her position at the command platform. "Engineering ready, Captain," came Martinez's voice, his Spanish accent thick with excitement. "Q drive is spooled and waiting. Conventional drives at full capacity. Weapons prepped and locked," reported Lieutenant Sarah Wong. "Phase cannons charged, point defense grid active, and the package is armed and ready. Medical bay standing by," Dr. Rajesh Patel's calm voice added, "though I hope we won't be needed." Torres took a deep breath, feeling the subtle vibration of the ship's systems through her boots. "Communications, send final acknowledgement to command. We're going dark as soon as we jump." "Aye, Captain." "Message sent. Wait." Lieutenant Davis's voice sharpened. "New data packet from the Lumerians. The Kraken fleet has accelerated. They'll reach the outer defense grid in 14 cycles, not 17. A murmur ran through the bridge crew. Torres felt her jaw tighten. "They're not going to give us much time to make an entrance. Navigation, plot the quantum fold coordinates. Let's show them what humanity can do when we're in a hurry." The holographic display came alive, showing their planned insertion point, just outside the Lumerian system's gravity well. The Kraken fleet appeared as a mass of red dots, moving with the inexorable confidence of predators who had never known defeat. "Q drive spooling to maximum," Martins reported. "Field stability at 98%. Better than any test run." Torres allowed herself a grim smile. "Of course it is. This time we're not practicing." She opened the ship-wide comm. "All hands. This is the captain. In about 5 minutes, we're going to do something no human ship has ever done before. We're going to quantum fold across half the galaxy to save a civilization we didn't know existed yesterday. Command chose us for this mission because we're the best, but more importantly, because we're the ones crazy enough to try it." She paused, watching as the Q drive's energy readings climbed toward critical mass. "The Kraken Dominion thinks they're invincible because they've never lost a battle. That changes today. We're going to show them why you should never corner a species that turned its own planet into a survival game and won. Stand by for quantum fold." The bridge lights dimmed as power redirected to the Q drive. The ship's hull began to vibrate at frequencies that made teeth ache and vision blur. This was the moment of truth. Either the quantum fold would work, or they'd be scattered across half the galaxy at an atomic level. "Q drive at maximum charge," Martinez announced, his voice tight with concentration. "Field stability holding at 98%. Ready on your mark, Captain." Torres took one last look at the tactical display, at the red dots representing the Kraken fleet. They had no idea what was coming. No idea that humanity had spent its entire history preparing for exactly this kind of fight. The kind where you're outnumbered, outgunned, and out of options except one. Win or die trying. "Initiate quantum fold," she ordered. "Let's go make history." The universe seemed to hold its breath. Then reality itself twisted, folded, and snapped like a rubber band. The Thunderchild vanished from Earth space in a flash of quantum energy that briefly outshone Jupiter. In the Lumerian system, 14 light-years from Earth, space itself tore open. The Thunderchild erupted into reality like a weapon being drawn from its sheath, its quantum-altered hull drinking in starlight and sensor scans alike. They had arrived with 3 cycles to spare before the Kraken fleet reached the outer defense grid. As sensor data flooded in, Torres allowed herself a moment of fierce pride. The Q drive had worked perfectly. They had crossed half the galaxy in an instant. Now came the hard part, proving that humanity's reputation for achieving the impossible wasn't just talk. "All stations, battle stations," she ordered. "Let's introduce ourselves to the neighborhood." The Thunderchild's systems came fully online, her unique capabilities about to be revealed to an unsuspecting galaxy. The game was about to change, and humanity was holding all the wild cards. The Lumerian High Council chamber fell silent as Captain Torres's hologram materialized before them. The human commander's presence seemed to fill the crystalline space, despite being merely a projection. Chief Archivist Silara noted how different Torres appeared from the refined diplomatic representatives they usually hosted. There was something predatory in her stance, something that spoke of barely contained violence. "Your outer defense grid won't hold against their first assault," Torres stated without preamble. "We've analyzed their approach vector. They're not here to negotiate. They're here to make an example of you." Ven's crystalline form shimmered with agitation. The grid was designed by our finest military architects. Its quantum-linked shields are predictable, Torres interrupted. And predictable defenses are dead defenses. The Kraken have probably already calculated exactly how to overwhelm them. She gestured, and a new hologram appeared. A complex tactical display showing the Lumerian system. But we can use that predictability against them. Silara moved closer to the display, her bioluminescence pulsing with interest. "What are you proposing, Captain?" "Something they'll never expect, because it goes against every principle of conventional space warfare." Torres's eyes gleamed. "We're going to let them break your defense grid." The chamber erupted in protests, but Torres raised her hand. "Let me finish. The Kraken Dominion has won every battle because they've never faced an enemy who thinks like humans do. We spent thousands of years perfecting the art of asymmetric warfare, of winning fights we weren't supposed to win." The tactical display shifted, showing the Thunderchild's position hidden within a nearby asteroid field. "Right now, they don't know we're here. Their sensors can't penetrate our quantum-altered hull. When they commit to their attack on your defense grid, they'll be focused on a target they think they understand. That's when we show them something new." In the Thunderchild's engineering section, Chief Engineer Martinez worked furiously at his console, making final adjustments to the Q-Drag's containment fields. The ship's unique power system hummed around him, a sound that still made the hairs on his neck stand up. "The modifications to the Lumerian quantum transmitters are ready," he reported through the comm. "If this works, well, it either works or we create a very impressive light show before we die." Dr. Patel's voice came through next. "The biological impact models are complete. Assuming the Kraken physiology data is accurate, the package should have the intended effect. Though I still can't believe we're actually doing this." On the bridge, Torres received the updates with grim satisfaction. The plan was insane. Exactly the kind of thing that had kept humanity alive through countless wars and near extinctions on Earth. The kind of plan that worked precisely because no sane species would ever attempt it. "Their fleet is entering final approach," Lieutenant Wong reported from Tactical. 2 cycles until they reach the outer defense grid." Torres opened a channel to the Lumerian High Council. "Begin your evacuation procedures. Make it obvious. We want them to think you're panicking." She paused. "And power up your quantum transmitter array. When I give the signal, you'll have exactly 30 seconds to execute your part of the plan." Silara's hologram appeared on the bridge. "Captain, I must ask, your plan? The risks are absolutely insane." Torres finished for her. "That's why it's going to work. The Kraken have never encountered humanity's greatest weapon, our ability to look at certain death and say, 'Watch this.'" The hours that followed were a blur of activity. The Thunderchild's crew made final preparations while watching the Kraken fleet approach. Torres had ordered complete communications blackout. Even the Lumerians didn't know their exact position anymore. In her quarters, Torres reviewed the plan one final time. It violated every principle of space combat doctrine. It required split-second timing and relied on theoretical physics that even their best scientists didn't fully understand. If it failed, they would not only die, but they would also fail humanity's first attempt to protect another species. But if it worked, "Captain to the bridge," Wong's voice cut through her thoughts. They're starting their attack run. Torres stood, straightening her uniform. As she walked to the bridge, she remembered something her grandfather, a history professor, used to say. Throughout human history, our greatest victories came when we had no choice but to try the impossible. The bridge was silent as she entered, all eyes focused on the tactical display. The Kraken fleet had formed up into their attack formation, a massive arrowhead of capital ships with smaller vessels forming layers of defense. It was beautiful in a terrifying way. Perfect, textbook, predictable. All stations, final check, Torres ordered, her voice carrying the weight of centuries of human warfare. We're about to show the galaxy why you should never assume that technological superiority equals tactical superiority. The Kraken fleet began their attack run on the defense grid, right on schedule, exactly as predicted, following the perfect tactical doctrine that had won them countless victories. They had no way of knowing that they were about to face something their perfect tactical doctrine had never accounted for. Human ingenuity backed into a corner. The galaxy was about to learn why Earth's history was filled with stories of victories that should have been impossible. All hands, Torres announced shipwide, prepare to execute Operation Murphy's Law. The Kraken fleet struck the Lumerian defense grid like a hammer hitting crystal. Energy weapons flared against quantum shields, creating a light show visible from the planet's surface. But something was wrong. The defense grid was failing too easily, its quantum-linked shields collapsing in patterns that seemed almost deliberate. On the bridge of the Kraken command ship Inevitable Victory, Fleet Commander Xarkax felt the first stirring of unease. Analysis of their defense protocols, he demanded, his chitinous mandibles clicking with irritation. Standard patterns, Commander, his tactical officer reported. Their quantum shield grid is falling exactly as predicted. They appear to be attempting to reinforce their inner defensive line. But the officer never finished his sentence. At that moment, every quantum transmitter in the Lumerian system activated simultaneously, creating a cascading web of energy that encased the entire battlefield. The Kraken fleet's sensors went blind, overwhelmed by the quantum interference. Now, Torres ordered from the Thunderchild's bridge. The human ship dropped its quantum camouflage and accelerated to attack speed, its modified hull drinking in energy from the Lumerian quantum web. The ship's unique design, previously seeming like a primitive attempt at stealth, revealed its true purpose. Each quantum pulse from the Lumerian transmitters added to the Thunderchild's power reserves, turning the battlefield itself into their weapon. Phase cannons charged beyond maximum specifications, Wong reported, her fingers dancing across her tactical console. Q drive at 130% capacity and rising. Torres allowed herself a fierce grin. Deploy the package. Let's show them why humans never stopped practicing chemical warfare. From the Thunderchild's launch tubes, hundreds of seemingly primitive missiles erupted into space. The Kraken fleet's point defense systems barely registered them as threats, their sensors showing them as simple kinetic weapons, hardly worth acknowledging. That was their second mistake. The missiles detonated in a carefully calculated pattern, releasing clouds of engineered particles that the Lumerian quantum web immediately energized. The particles, designed by Dr. Patel based on their knowledge of Kraken biology, began their work. On the Kraken ships, chaos erupted. The particles, now quantum charge, were passing straight through their shields, interacting with the silicon-based biology of their crews. Not killing them, that would have been too merciful. Instead, it triggered their natural molting response, forcing thousands of Kraken warriors to shed their protective exoskeletons simultaneously. By the void, Xarkax breathed, watching as his bridge crew collapsed, their bodies betraying them. What kind of weapons are these? The answer came in the form of the Thunderchild emerging from the quantum interference like an ancient sea monster. It tall, now pulsing with absorbed energy, made it look less like a ship and more like a living weapon. This is Captain Torres of the UES Thunderchild. Her voice cut through the chaos on every Kraken frequency. You're probably wondering what just happened. Short answer: we cheated. Turns out when you combine Lumerian quantum physics with human biological warfare and a healthy disregard for impossible, you get something new. The Thunderchild's phase cannons opened up, each shot guided by targeting algorithms that predicted where the Kraken ships would be, not where they were. The quantum-charged energy beams passed through their conventional shields like they weren't there, carving through armor plates with surgical precision. Second wave, Torres ordered. Show them why we called this Operation Murphy's Law. The Thunderchild's Q drive spooled up, but not for retreat. Instead, it created localized quantum folds throughout the battlefield, micro-wormholes that redirected the Kraken fleet's own weapon fire back at them. Ships began firing at enemies in front of them, only to have their shots emerge behind them. In the Lumerian High Council chamber, Solara watched in awe as the mighty Kraken fleet fell into disarray. They're breaking formation, she whispered. Ven's crystalline form vibrated with excitement. Not just breaking formation. They're running. The Kraken fleet, for the first time in their recorded history, was retreating. Ships vanished into FT-11-1s and 2s, then in groups, leaving their disabled companions behind. Their perfect tactical doctrine had no protocols for dealing with an enemy that turned physics itself into a weapon. On the Thunderchild's bridge, Torres watched the retreat with satisfaction. Damage report. Minor hull breaches on decks 3 and 7, Chen reported. Q drive operating at 85% efficiency. Phase cannons need 2 hours to cool down. He paused. We bloodied their nose, Captain, but they'll be back. Torres nodded. Good, because now they're going to make their third mistake. They're going to get angry. And angry enemies make predictable enemies. She opened a channel to engineering. Martinez, begin preparations for Phase 2. It's time to show them what happens when humans have time to get creative. The Thunderchild hung in space, surrounded by the debris of what had been the Kraken's first wave. The quantum web still pulsed around them, a reminder that this battle had rewritten the rules of space warfare. But Torres knew this was just the beginning. Send word to Earth, she ordered. Tell them Operation Murphy's Law was successful. Request permission to proceed with Phase 2. She looked at the tactical display, where the retreating Kraken ships were regrouping at the edge of the system, and tell them to hurry. I don't think our friends out there are going to wait long for Round 2. The battle was won, but the war was just beginning, and humanity was about to demonstrate why underestimating Earth was the last mistake any species would ever make. In the depths of the Thunderchild's science lab, Dr. Patel hunched over a quantum microscope, studying fragments recovered from a disabled Kraken vessel. Behind her, Captain Torres and Chief Archivist Solara waited in tense silence. The lab's holographic displays showed streams of data from their analysis of the Kraken technology. There, Patel said suddenly, her dark eyes lighting up. Look at this, she gestured, and the quantum microscope's feed appeared on the main display. Their quantum shielding isn't actually quantum at all. It's a sophisticated mimicry. Torres leaned forward, her expression intense. Explain. They've been copying advanced technologies without understanding the underlying principles. Patel continued, excitement creeping into her voice, like someone learning to repeat phrases in a language they don't actually speak. Their entire technological base is built on stolen innovations. Solara's bioluminescence pulsed with surprise. That's why they strip conquered worlds of their technology. They're not just taking resources. They're taking inspiration. Torres finished. Each conquest gives them new technologies to copy. But copying isn't the same as understanding. She turned to Patel. Can we use this? The scientist's smile was answer enough. Their fake quantum systems can't handle real quantum interactions. That's why our first attack worked so well. But now, she brought up new simulations. Now we can do something even better. On the bridge, Commander Chen coordinated with Lumerian defense forces, preparing for the Kraken's inevitable return. Long-range sensors showed the enemy fleet regrouping, their numbers swelling as reinforcements arrived through FTL. "They're adapting their tactics," Chen reported as Torres returned to the bridge. "New formation patterns, modified shield configurations. They're learning." "Good," Torres replied, settling into her command position. "Let them learn the wrong lessons." She opened a channel to engineering. "Martinez, status on the modifications." "Ready, Captain," the engineer's voice crackled back. "Though I still think this is loco even by our standards." Torres allowed herself a grim smile. "Noted. Begin power-up sequence." She turned to tactical. "Lieutenant Wong, deploy the quantum buoys as planned. Let's set the stage for Act 2. In space around the Thunderchild, dozens of small devices activated, each one a combination of Lumerian quantum technology and human ingenuity. They began generating a complex web of quantum fields, but unlike the defensive grid from their first encounter, these were designed for a very different purpose. "Kraken fleet is moving," Wong announced. "Multiple vectors, spread formation. They're trying to avoid clustering their forces. They learned from last time," Chen observed. "They won't fall for the same trick twice." Torres's smile widened slightly. "They're not supposed to." "Silara, is your team ready?" The Lumerian's hologram nodded. "All quantum transmitters are reconfigured according to Dr. Patel's specifications, though I must admit the calculations seem impossible." "Impossible is what we do best," Torres replied. "All hands, battle stations. Time to show them why humanity never stopped playing chess." The Kraken fleet approached more cautiously this time, their formation spread wide to minimize the effectiveness of area attacks. Their sensors probed ahead, looking for traps similar to the ones they'd encountered before. But they found nothing. Just a single human vessel and a scattered network of seemingly harmless buoys. On the bridge of his new flagship, Fleet Commander Xarkax chittered in anticipation. "No signs of their quantum weapon." "None, Commander," his tactical officer reported. "Their vessel appears to be operating on minimal power. The buoys are generating some form of field, but nothing our new shields can't handle." Xarkax's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. "Good. Begin the attack pattern. This time, we'll show these humans what real space warfare looks like." The Kraken fleet accelerated, their weapons charging. But as they crossed the invisible line marked by the quantum buoys, something changed. Space itself seemed to shiver, like heat waves rising from hot ground. "Now," Torres ordered. The Thunderchild's Q drive activated, but not to move the ship. Instead, it connected with the quantum buoy network, creating a cascade effect that rippled through space. The Lumerian quantum transmitters added their power to the mix, and suddenly the laws of physics began to play favorites. Inside the affected zone, the Kraken's copied quantum technology began to fail in spectacular ways. Shields collapsed, weapons misfired, and navigation systems went haywire. Their sophisticated mimicry of advanced technology, stripped of its false quantum effects, reverted to its basic mechanical nature. "What's happening?" Xarkax demanded as his ship's systems began to fail one by one. The answer came in the form of the Thunderchild, suddenly very much not operating at minimal power. The human ship moved through the chaos like a shark through bloody water, its weapons striking with deadly precision at targets that could no longer defend themselves properly. "You copied the technology." Torres's voice echoed through the failing Kraken communications. "But you never understood the science behind it. Here's today's physics lesson. You can't fool quantum mechanics." The battle became a rout. Kraken ships, stripped of their stolen advantages, found themselves facing an enemy that understood not just how to use advanced technology, but why it worked. The Thunderchild, supported by newly activated Lumerian defense platforms, methodically dismantled the invasion fleet. In the High Council chamber, Silara watched the tactical displays with a mixture of awe and horror. "They knew," she whispered. "The humans knew the Kraken would adapt to their first attack, so they designed a counter that would only work against the adaptation. Ven's crystalline form sparkled with understanding. They didn't just plan for this battle. They planned for the entire war in advance. The Kraken fleet, faced with an enemy that had turned their own technological theft against them, began a final, desperate retreat. But this time, they weren't just running from a defeat. They were running from a revelation. Somewhere out there, a species had evolved that didn't just fight battles, they orchestrated them. "The Kraken fleet is in full retreat," Wang reported. "Shall we pursue?" Tori shook her head. "No need. They got the message." She opened a channel to Earth Command. Phase 2 complete. The Kraken Dominion just learned why you don't pick fights with a species that turned warfare into a science. As the Thunderchild's crew began damage assessment and repairs, Torres knew this victory would echo across the galaxy. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, not as conquerors or victims, but as defenders of the weak. And they had done it in true human fashion, by breaking all the rules and rewriting the laws of what was possible. 1 month after the Battle of the Lumerian System, the Grand Hall of the Galactic Concordat hummed with nervous energy. Representatives from 100 species filled the ancient chamber, their attention fixed on the unexpected sight before them, a human delegation standing beside the Lumerians. Captain Torres, now wearing her formal dress uniform, stood at the podium, her presence somehow filling the vast space. The victory over the Kraken Dominion had earned humanity an invitation to address the Concordat, the first time an emerging species had ever done so. "We didn't come here to brag about our victory," Torres began, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "We came to issue a warning and an invitation." The chamber's holographic displays activated, showing footage from the battles. The Thunderchild's impossible maneuvers, the quantum warfare that had rewritten the rules of space combat, the final retreat of the mighty Kraken fleet. For too long, this galaxy has operated on the assumption that technological superiority equals the right to dominate. Torres continued. The Kraken Dominion built their empire on stolen innovations, using them to prey on peaceful civilizations. They thought technology alone made them invincible. She paused, letting the images of the defeated Kraken fleet hang in the air. They were wrong. Humanity proved that understanding trumps possession every time. We didn't win because we had better ships or stronger weapons. We won because we never stopped asking why and what if. We won because on Earth, we learned that the most dangerous weapon isn't the biggest. It's the one your enemy doesn't understand. In the Concordat chamber's upper galleries, Fleet Commander Ktar Kax watched silently. The Kraken leader had come not as a conqueror this time, but as a supplicant. The defeat at Lumeria had shattered the Dominion's aura of invincibility. Half their subject worlds had already declared independence. "But we're not here to replace one empire with another," Torres continued. "Humanity is proposing something new, the Defenders' Accord. Any peaceful civilization that wishes to join will receive not just protection, but understanding. We'll teach the principles behind the technology, not just hand over the tools." A murmur ran through the chamber. What Torres was proposing was revolutionary. A defensive alliance based on shared knowledge rather than shared weapons. In her seat among the Lumerian delegation, Solara's bioluminescence pulsed with pride. The humans had done more than save her people. They had changed the very nature of galactic politics. "The Kraken Dominion taught us all a valuable lesson," Torres went on. "Copying technology without understanding it is like building a house on sand. Sooner or later, someone who knows why things work will show up and knock it down." She gestured, and new images appeared. Recordings from the Thunderchild's teaching sessions with Lumerian engineers, showing humans and aliens working together to understand the principles behind their innovations. "This is humanity's offer to the galaxy. Let us teach you why things work, not just how. Let us show you what's possible when you combine understanding with imagination. And let us stand together against anyone who thinks might makes right." The chamber erupted in discussion. Representatives from dozens of species began signaling their interest in the Defenders' Accord. Even some former Kraken subject worlds, newly independent, were among them. On the Thunderchild, now in orbit above the Concordat homeworld, Commander Chen watched the proceedings with satisfaction. "Think they understand what they're signing up for?" he asked Martinez, who stood beside him in the observation deck. The engineer chuckled. "You mean, do they realize they're about to get crash courses in human physics, human tactics, and human creativity? Probably not, but they'll learn. Like the Kraken learned," Chen added with a smile. In the chamber below, Torres was concluding her speech. "Humanity has a saying. The best way to win a fight is to make sure it never starts. That's what the Defenders Accord is really about. We're not just offering protection. We're offering understanding. Because in our experience, the species that understand how things work rarely need to steal from others." She looked directly at Xarcax in the gallery. "And those who do choose to steal, well, they've seen what happens when they face someone who truly understands the technology they're using." The former Kraken commander chittered softly in acknowledgement. The lesson had been learned, paid for in shattered ships and broken pride. As the signing ceremony began, Torres stepped back from the podium. Earth's first major galactic initiative was becoming reality. They had arrived on the galactic stage, not through conquest or commerce, but by defending those who needed help. It was, she reflected, a very human way to make an entrance. "Captain," her comm unit chirped. "Message from Earth Command. They're asking about expanding the Thunderchild program." Torres smiled. Of course they were. Humanity had tasted what was possible when you combined advanced technology with human ingenuity. There would be more Thunderchilds, more innovations, more impossible victories. But more importantly, there would be understanding. Because humans had learned long ago that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't technology. It was the ability to look at something impossible and ask, why not? The galaxy would never be the same. And that, Torres reflected, was exactly how it should be.